stay prayed up, stay in this book constantly. And one last thing on praise and worship. The reason why it hits me so hard is because we don't know how it's going to unfold. But you may be stressed out where you can't remember those scriptures. Or you may be where they don't allow you to have your Bible. Even if they put tape on our mouths, you can't stop us from praise and worship. Amen? You can do that within your spirit. So that's why that praise and worship is our key to victory. So with that, we're going to go into today's class. Last week we introduced Yaakov to the 12th power. This is part 2. So just to recap, you remember in Genesis 1:14, the Most High commanded that he gave us, the luminaries, the time markers. If you have time, you can dig into the Adam and Eve book and realize that the sun and the moon were given after transgression. We wasn't supposed to, Adam and Eve, our family, we were supposed to be eternal, just like the Most High and the angels. But after we sinned, now we became mortal, and that's why we had time markers. And because we became mortal, according to the Most High, our time markers are the stars and the moon and the sun. But the moon, we found out, the moon is the master luminary. She's the glory of the heavens. So now we're going to go into part 2, showing you that some people, if you've been on social media, you know some people are going into their Hanukkah this month, and this is not to. Are we good? We good over there? This is not to bash anybody's calendar or their understanding. This is just teaching for truth's sake, and if anything, this is to encourage those in the awakening to remain patient and humble and understanding, because as we're doing things out of ignorance, so are the Christians. So I hear a lot of the brothers, when they have debates, they agree to disagree and says, well, maybe the Most High give me understanding later. And that's the attitude to have. But when it comes to the Christians, we're more cutthroat, want to embarrass them and chop their head off, not realizing the same patience we extend to one another when we disagree, we should extend that to the Christians, because the Most High hasn't awakened them yet. We can't gloat that we've been awakened and see that we're Israel. So if anything, this is not bashing anyone's feast schedule. This is just sharing truth for truth's sake. So last week we verified that we can't find 13 months in any of the ancient scrolls. Even in the KJV, the 66 books, all we see is 12 months, 12 months, 12 months. And we verified that with the KJV 66 and secular sources. So today we're going to finish up showing you that intercalating, which is an old word for just adding a 13th month is very dangerous, because it's based on Babylonian customs. The whole math, how they compute, is based on Babylon. So our elders' understanding, and we want to get into it, our elders' understanding, and most of these were Talmudists, is if we're reaching the end of the 12th month and they check the fields and the barley is not ripe, which means we don't have enough ripe barley to offer the Omer. The Omer, here's our schedule. Y'all know the 14th of Abib is Passover. Well, now we know the 15th is Shabbat, and the 15th also starts unleavened bread. So the 14th of the first month is Passover, the 15th starts unleavened bread, and then on the 16th, the second day of unleavened bread, we have to offer the Omer, which is an offering of barley, and we got to offer it to the Most High before we can reap or eat any of the crops of the field. So they're saying if they check the field and the barley is not ripe, where we got enough where we can offer the Omer, then we have to intercalate or add a 13th month. The problem with that is, and I want y'all to write on y'all calendars that in 2019 they had a 13th month. Because what you're going to find out is the math is based on Babylonian astrology. And you're going to find the rhythm in one of the documents. But let's get into it. We're going to see the dangers of adding the 13th month. So on your handout, The first point says, origin of intercalating a 13th month into the Most High schedule. For the sake of time, I won't pull it up, but I do recommend that you download the Babylonian Talmud and download the Jerusalem Talmud. I too was like, no, those things are evil. They're saying bad things about the Messiah, and they're evil and they're wicked, and I don't want to touch those books. But now that I've been reading them, I don't accept nothing. We don't practice nothing from the Talmudists, but our history of what was going on is in there. So the Babylonian Talmud has 2 clauses for adding a 13th month, and you see on your sheet there, one rabbi named Toby. So that R means rabbi. His name is Rabbi Toby. The B is Bon. He's the son of Matana. He objected. He says, in the rolls of the fast, it is said that on the 28th of Adar, the good news came to the Jews that they no longer abstain from studying the law, for the king of Syria had earlier issued a decree forbidding them to study the law or to circumcise their sons, compelling them to desecrate their Sabbath. So what he's saying here is Rabbi Toby says, let's celebrate. The king of Assyria has finally said, we can have our scrolls back. We can practice our law. So the whole period where this king of Assyria had us on restriction, well, we lost our customs. The elders had to make up the best they could. So we lost track of the Sabbath. We lost track of the feast days. So now this rabbi is saying, praise the Most High. He has softened the heart of king of Syria. We can study our laws again. So the takeaway is, if we couldn't study our laws, that's a cause or one reason why they had to start intercalating or doing the best they can with the calendar. So that's one clause. The second clause, and again, the beautiful thing about these PDFs, once you download them, they're small files, you can control F for words like calendar, moon, and stuff like that, and these references will pop up. So the second clause you see on your sheet is from Rabbi Samuel. He says, I can arrange the calendar for the whole captivity. And then Abba, the father of Rabbi Simla, said to him, does the master know that which a certain Beretha just means a law or oral law, teaches concerning the secret of the intercalary days, viz., whether the new moon appears before or after midday? He answered, no. Then master, said he, if thou dost not know this, there may be other things which thou dost not know. So this one rabbi is using some wisdom. This one rabbi says, listen, I can make up a calendar for all the captivity, because we had Jews all over, and we were reliant on testimony from Babylon or Jerusalem to start our calendar. But then, as wicked kings was like, no more new moon declarations, we had to come up with different things. So this rabbi says, I can come up with a calendar for the whole captivity. And this other rabbi says, well, do you know the secret of intercalation? And he says, well, no. So the rabbi says, well, if you don't know that, there's other things you couldn't know, and you'll throw everybody off. So already we see intercalating wasn't necessarily based on an evil thing. They were trying to do something good. But the takeaway, now that we're Israelites, is the only reason we're losing our way, according to Jubilees, is when we stop following the law and start breaking the commandments. These nations are going to rise up against us, and now we're losing our feast days. So if all we had to do was keep the law, and we would have never had these pagan kings over us. But now that they are over us, instead of us repenting and asking the Most High to grant us favor, these Talmudic rabbis are coming up with workarounds. In the IT field, it's called a workaround. If something breaks, I give you a workaround so I can completely fix it. So that's why I don't practice the Talmud. Because instead of them breaking down and saying, Yah, forgive us, we have sinned, they just says, we're going to make a workaround. It's like being on punishment, we're going to make a workaround. It's like being on punishment. Mom said I couldn't watch TV, but she didn't say I couldn't watch my phone. You just made a workaround. So that's why I don't follow Talmud, because instead of them humbling themselves down, saying, listen, let's fast and pray and ask for forgiveness, they said we're going to make a workaround, and they started adding a 13th month. So even though it wasn't necessarily an evil reason, they still used Babylonian customs to do this 13th month. And we read last week in the book of Joshua what happened to the elder who took those Babylonian goods. He and his whole family was killed. So the second bullet point there on your sheet is talking about Anan. Anan, the enemy of the Talmudists. So these Moreh wars popping up, these camp wars popping up, everyone calling each other out, insulting one another. Family, it's not new. We are our children's fathers. When you read the Talmud, you're going to see it was multiple sects or cliques popping up in Israel. In the New Testament, we read about the Sadducees, the Pharisees. They were the most popular ones that survived and stayed intact. But the Talmud, it was many sects. One sect here was called after this elder Anan. Anan, he hated the Talmud. Anan says, if I could swallow the Talmud, the Talmud is two different groups, the Mishnah and the Gemara. Anan says, I wish I could swallow the Talmud and then jump into a fire or something, he says. He hated the Talmud. So people who follow Anan became known as Anites or Karaites. Karaites means we're Bible only. They believe in the Bible only. So Karaites seem like a good sect to belong to. But this is what Anan says. Anan says, by his general precept, search well in the scriptures. He declared as naught the whole oral law. He declared as naught the whole oral law. He says the oral law, the Mishnah and the Gemara is garbage. Search the scriptures and throw the Talmud away. So he hated the Talmud. Then it says, and wishing to find favor in the eyes of the caliphs who fixed the dates of their festival by the observation of the new moon, he also renewed this custom once in force among the Jews while the temple had existed. So this one resource that this is coming from is called The History of Palestine. And the history of Palestine is our history while the Muslims were in power. And the reason why this is a valuable PDF to download is it bears witness Psalms 83, where it says, and they are confederate against our hidden ones, the Ishmaelites, the Hagarites. So Ishmael is now running us in Jerusalem. And this Anan says, I want to win favor with the caliphs. The caliphs is just a word for the Muslims, Morehs. The Muslim Morehs or rabbis, they call themselves caliphs. So Anan says, I'm going to win favor with the caliphs because they're ruling us now. He said, I'm going to throw away that intercalation and I'm going back to recognizing the new moon, which was in force during the first temple period. So this is another witness is saying, we don't calculate. We use these signs, these luminaries. So Anan says, I'm going to put these Talmudists to shame, and I'm going to win favor with the Muslims. I'm restoring observation of the moon. I'm doing away with, and it says here, repealing thus the calculation of Rabbi Ada received among all the Talmudists. So Anan was an enemy of the Talmudists, and him and his clique says we're doing away with the calculations. We're going back to what was in force when we had the first temple of Solomon. And again, if you download the Talmud and the history of Palestine, these two PDFs, that's where these sources are coming from. So if you turn the page on the back, I didn't number the pages, so forgive me for that. And this is the same source, the history of Palestine. He says, the dates of New Year and the Day of Atonement, Passover, and the Feast of Booths were determined by watching for the new moon, which did not agree with the Jewish dates. Now these Jewish right here is not the Khazars. These are the Talmudists. These are the Sanhedrin Jews. So he's saying, we're going back to the original, and our dates are off with the Talmudists. He says, as in the leap year, 1 month is added to the year, he allowed, in case of need, to begin Passover when barley is ripe in the fields. So he's saying those Sanhedrin Talmudists are adding a month when needed, when the barley is ripe in the field. So this is another source pointing out that Anan restored our original customs of observation. He goes on to say, the Israelites living in exile were dependent for their information concerning the date of the new year entirely upon the messengers sent out by the high court in Palestine. Again, those in captivity, we're waiting to hear from Jerusalem if they could, because that's another debate people have made. Well, we're in captivity, so we don't do the new moon no more. And it's like, no, that's not what it's saying. And some people are like saying, well, we're going on Jerusalem time. We can't go on Jerusalem time. We have to go where we're at. So we're tracking the new moon where we're at. But I got a friend in Jerusalem. They're only 7 hours behind us. So I confirmed with him when they see the new moon, and I asked if they had the barley. So I do have a point of reference, but they're only like 7 or 8 hours behind us. But you track the new moon where you're at. You don't base, you're in captivity, you don't base it in Jerusalem now. But this here, in ancient time, they did. They wouldn't establish their calendar till they had those messengers come saying, we have consecrated the new moon. Again, another resource saying these calculations are not original. The calculations are not original. So he says, the Israelites living in exile were dependent for their information concerning the date of the new year entirely upon the messengers sent out by the high court in Palestine, which in turn fixed the date upon the testimony of witnesses who would announce when the new moon appeared, as explained in tract Rosh Hashanah, tract of the new year. Thus, the exiled people did not know whether the 30th or 31st from the first day of Elul. So they're saying, we know we done reached 30 and 31 days, and we know our months never have 31 days, but we still really can't fix our calendar. Witnesses come and bear witness, because according to the Most High, if he wants to keep the new moon from coming, then he keeps the new moon from coming. So our ancients were so like, listen, we're going to follow tradition, even though the 30th has passed and we never have 31 months. We can assume it's the new moon has come, but we want to hear the witnesses say the new moon has consecrated. Just another reference that calculations are not original. So to the family online, I'm going to share my screen. We got a reference here. Let me pull it up. And this is another PDF. I recommend everyone gets this because this PDF is full of information about our history. And when you return, I got extra copies when you come back to the buyout. So let me share my screen and we're going to go over this document, just some highlights from this website. Queen, did you hand out the handouts for the calendar drift, the seasonal drift of the?
Yes.
So, Elder, Sister Barbara, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
It's the seasonal drift. You see that? Okay, so you guys have a handout, so I don't have to drag it to the TV. So this doctor from Canada did some research on us, and most of his references are coming from the Talmud. That's why I recommend just going ahead and downloading the Talmud, because he's using the Talmud for his references. Again, the Talmud has some true, accurate history about our people in ancient times. So this article is the seasonal drift of the traditional fixed arithmetic Hebrew calendar. It's by Dr. Irv Bromberg, University of Toronto, Canada. Looking at that name, Bromberg, I'm pretty much guessing he's a Khazar. So this website is on your page. You can bookmark this. I went through all of these links and I studied it extensively. And this is how I came to conclude. When I was vacillating between Saturday and New Moon, this one website helped, with other resources, helped me make my decision that it is the new moon. Tracking the new moon is the way our ancestors did it. So we're going to start with the first paragraph. The leap rule and mean calendar year of the traditional Hebrew calendar. The long-term alignment, The long-term alignment and synchronization of any calendar with respect to the solar year. That's strike one right there. Family, we're not sun worshipers. The Most High never told us to keep track with the sun. That's what these sun worshipers are having a problem with. They want the sun to be the master timepiece, and according to the Most High, the moon is the master timepiece. So there's code words for sun worship. Seasons, tropical, are all code words for sun worship. Nowhere is our calendar supposed to be synchronized with the sun. So he says, of any calendar with respect to the solar year, and therefore the seasons depend on the difference between the mean solar year and the mean calendar year. It is impossible to design a calendar without a leap rule. So they're saying, if that's your thing, you trying to keep the real calendar, the Most High's calendar, in line with the sun, the only way you can do it is with a leap year. But in our scrolls, we have no record, no commandment that we are to keep track with the sun. Even in Enoch, when you go back and read Enoch 72, the luminaries, Enoch, the Uriel told Enoch, and the moon and the sun will have X amount of days more than the moon. So the Most High knows the sun has more days than the moon because there's some days we can't see the moon. So the angel told Enoch the moon's going to fall behind. I forgot the math. If you check Enoch 72. So yes, the moon falls behind, but nowhere does he says, and to catch the moon up, do this nowhere. But the sun worshipers want the sun to be the master timepiece, so that's why the leap year comes in. And this is why it's dangerous, because now you're telling the Most High, you don't know how to plan, let me help you. That's why this is dangerous. So, dropping down to the second paragraph, and this is what I want you to take note of here. On any of the calendars you have, on all of them for this year, the Hebrew calendars, write that in 2019, they had 13 months. Because now we're going to try to track and see if they're on point with this math here. So I'm dropping down to the third paragraph here. The 19-year cycle, everyone see that? The 19-year cycle?
Yes.
So it says, the 19-year cycle that is generally known as the Messianic cycle was published by the Greek astronomer Meton of Athens in the year 432 BC, but was already known to ancient Babylonian and Chinese astronomers. The Greeks are Johnny-come-latelys. They have no knowledge, they have no understanding. Everything they got that makes sense, they stole from the Kemetics or the Egyptians or the Hamites, and they stole from us and the Babylonians, and they put their name on top of it. So this Greek astronomer Meton, he's a plagiarist. He stole this math from Babylon. So it says, in 19 non-leap years, there are 12 by 19, which equals 228 regular months. Regular months means a month of 30 days. So this cycle requires 235 minus 228 months equals 7 leap years per cycle, the full complement of 235 months. Traditionally, the leap years of each Hebrew 19-year cycle are years 3, years 6, years 8, 11, 14, 17, and 19. So they're saying you can group this math we borrowed from Babylon says in the 3rd year add a 13th month, in the 6th year add a 13th month, in the 8th, so on and so forth. The problem is this is borrowed from Babylon, and the Babylonian math or astrologers were sorcerers. Nowhere the Most High tell us to copy off Babylon. So at the heart, maybe these rabbis had a good thing, because also in the Talmud you'll find out the Samaritans who hate us, they kept doing wicked stuff like sending out fake signals. They would go on a mountain and send out smoke signals because they knew that's what we did. We would light bonfires on mountains to let our people know the new moon is consecrated. So the Samaritans who hate us, that's why that story about the Good Samaritan, they don't understand what that's really saying. It's not saying that everybody's the same. Anyway, the Samaritans started doing stuff like making fake smoke signals to throw us off. So trying to make a calculated calendar is not the evil here. The evil comes with borrowing stuff from Babylon, and then again, these nations are in our land ruling us because of sin. So the Most High gave us the remedy. He didn't say just make a workaround and bear with these nations. No, he says, repent, you and your sons, come back to my law, statutes, commandments with all your heart, and I will heal your land. If my people who are called by my name. So these rabbis, they may have had a good heart or good intention, but what do they say about good intentions? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So borrowing this 13th month math from Babylon is very, very dangerous. So turning the page here, I'm going to drop down to page 2 of this handout, and the sources for the Hebrew calendar intercalation criteria. This is the sources for the Hebrew calendar intercalation criteria. So this is how they came up with the criteria if we're going to intercalate a 13th month. Shema? Shema. So the most often cited Hebrew calendar intercalation criterion comes from the first commandment in the Torah. Shamar Atah, Had, Dashah, Had, Abib. Guard the month of Abib. So they're saying they're basing this on Torah. That's what you're going to find if you start studying the Talmud. they all interpreted the scriptures totally different, and it makes no sense. But they think they're honoring this scripture when they intercalate, but they're not. So let's drop down for the sake of time. Let's turn over to the next page. So in your handout, it's going to be, and for those online, I'm at this paragraph right here. In the era, we're going to read this right here. In the era of the ancient observational Hebrew calendar, all months tended to start at least one day after the lunar conjunction. Anybody know what the lunar conjunction is? The lunar conjunction is when you can't see the moon because it's directly behind the sun. It's this right here. The moon is still there. You can see her rim. She's still there, but this is conjunction. So it's saying here, it's bearing record, because some people use this moon called the black moon, the dark moon. Some people use this to start their calendar. But it's saying you can't observe nothing. You can't, the word guard and observe, you have to see something. So it's bearing witness that the earliest you can start your new month is the day after this, because 24 hours after this, you get the new crescent. Everybody with me? Mm-hmm. So this is the traditional way for not only the Israelites, but for the Muslims, the Arabs, for the Persians. This is the traditional way. This is the conjunction. The moon's behind the sun. 24 hours later, you're going to see that first crescent. This consecrates the new month. That's what this paragraph is saying. It says, because the earliest that a month could start was the day upon which qualified witnesses reported a validated sighting of the first visible lunar crescent after sunset. That's what we're returning to. After 29 to 30 days, we're looking in that western sky after sunset for this new crescent. We're following the ways of our ancestors, how they did it. Which astronomically can occur no earlier than about 24 hours after the conjunction. Even with the fixed arithmetic, Hebrew calendar of today's months tend to start about after the day after the Milad, based on the average. The Rosh Hashanah postponement rules cause a 1 day delay. So he just said, even with their calculated calendar, their math seems to be following this, that the month starts here. So even their math seems to be trying to keep up with this, but they lose track of it. So for the sake of time, let's drop down to, y'all see that paragraph that starts with Rabbi Shlomo? Rabbi Shlomo? He's a famous Israelite. He has books in the library. His writings are all over. And his the abbreviation for his name is Rashi. His Rabbi Shlomo Yasazaki, they call him Rashi. So his records starting from like the 1000 to 1100s, and this is what he said. He wrote a comment on guard the month of Abib, explaining that the Hebrew word Abib refers to its ancient meaning barley, and that a measure of fine flour prepared from newly ripened, freshly harvested barley had to be available for the Omer offering in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem on the second day of Passover. Nobody was allowed to eat from the new grains until after the Omer had been offered. In the climate of ancient Israel, barley was planted early in the autumn and was ready for harvest at the beginning of spring. Rashi wrote that they used to intercalate the calendar year if otherwise the required measure of newly ripened barley wouldn't be available in time for Passover. The next paragraph talks about another famous Israelite. If you Google him, he's been whitewashed, but his name is Rambam, and that's an acronym for his name. His records, I got a couple of PDFs of him, or I had one, I gotta get them again on his computer. He records stuff. But the takeaway, family, is this tradition of adding a 13th month, if the barley is not right, came from the Talmudists. But it's funny that the rhythm or their system that they used is borrowed from Babylon. It's borrowed from Babylon. So this is yours to keep. Those online, you can also, when you come back, we have multiple copies. But let's go on page 4. Let's go on page 4 of this handout, and I'm going to go down to the paragraph that starts with insertion of Adar. Insertion of Adar. Let me see. Insertion of Adar. So those online can see it here. So we're going to read the insertion of Adar. It says, insertion of Adar Rashan after Shabbat would have no effect on the timing of the autumn equinox in the same calendar year, because that equinox would fall well before the leap month. So this debate is puzzling unless it refers to the insertion of an extra month of Elul before Tishri, as was done by the Babylonians in year 17 of their 19-year cycle. So wait a minute. First you're saying we're going to add a month if the barley not right, but now it's come to find out y'all adding a month after the 6th and 7th month. So which one is it? Are you adding a month because the barley not right, or you just following Babylon? You're following Babylon. we cannot follow Babylon. So the last point we're going to get here is that paragraph, and also you notice here is referring to the Talmud Yerushalmi. You see that there? Talmud Yerushalmi. That's the Jerusalem Talmud. And then the second one says the Talmud Bavli. That's the Babylonian Talmud. So let's read what it got there. The Jerusalem Talmud, the first one says, this is Tracts Shaqual, page 1, paragraph 2, I guess. They do not intercalate the year in either of the case of the 7th year or in the case after the year after the 7th year, but if they did so, then the intercalation stands. It's confusion, family. Jerusalem is saying, we're going to do it this way. And again, it became some cliques. The Jerusalem Israelites was like, y'all are in captivity. Y'all are, excuse my language, y'all are bastards. Jerusalem rules, and my rabbi says, my Moreh says, we're doing it this way. So we always had this beef going on, Jerusalem versus the Babylonian Jews. The Babylonian Jews says, our rabbis have taught on Tanait authority. Tanait is an old word meaning Moreh, meaning a rabbi. They do not intercalate the year either in the case of the 7th year or in the case of the year after the. So it's a bunch of confusion going on, family. When are you supposed to intercalate? Why are you intercalating? The last point we're going to read here, it says, in the 7th year. We have something called the Shemitah year, and I told you before, the Shemitah year is where they get chapter 7 from. The Most High, and we're going to go over it. We're doing good too in our, I forgot to mention that. We're on point with our semester. It looks like we're going to get into the Torah like towards the last 3 months of our year. But we have something in our Torah that says every 7th year, you are to let your fields lie dormant. Do not plant nothing in these fields. Let the fields rest, and you're going to live off your storehouses. So they're saying, okay, what we're going to do in the 7th year when it's a Shemitah. It says, in the 7th year or Shemitah year, no crops could be planted or harvested in Israel. The land had to lie fallow. In order to minimize the hardships for farmers and the general community, intercalation of Adar was avoided where possible. Wait a minute. First you're saying the ball is not right, we got to add a year. Now you're saying we can't hurt the farmers, so during the year of Shemitah, what is it? There's no consistency. They're just following Babylon. This is why it's dangerous adding this 13th month. So my suggestion to give you some more understanding about our culture, go through this website, and it's some great resources, but most of his resources, his references are coming from the Talmud. So that's why I said just go ahead and download the 2 Talmuds, and you can control F for words like intercalation, moon, months, and calendar, and these references will come up. But now we see why they've added a 13th month. Now we get the history of why they're doing it. Now what we got to do, we got to take a look at our scrolls and see if Yah approves this. The first precept we're going to go to is Exodus 13 and 4. Exodus 13 and 4. Exodus 13 and 4. Shemai, when you there? Thank you for your work. Someone want to help read it?
This day came out in the month of Abib, and it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Havites, and the Jebusites, which he sware unto thy father to give thee a land flowing with milk and honey, that thou shalt keep this service in this month.
Thank you. So we came out in the month of Abib. And this is why it's important for us to learn our language. So we're saying the month of Abib because it's based on a translation or transliteration, whatever. If you look at the word Abib in our Hebrew, the word is actually Abyab. Abyab. And the characters you're going to see is the ox head for strength. You're going to see the Ba, the tent door. So strength and the tent door. So Ba means what's inside. So the strength of what's inside, right? This the third letter that they're turning into an I is the Yah. Yah is the hand of a man. So we got the strength, the hand, and then another Ba. What is it? What are we saying? Yah. So the strength of what's inside with the hand, I shape and I form stuff. So Abib is really the strength of what's inside is being formed from inside. You see how our language makes sense? That's why I love our language, because it's our culture and the words make sense if you can see the glyphs. So Abib is really Abyab, and it's the strength of what's inside being formed inside. So nowhere when you read these references does he say, if the body is not right, start another year. You can check it on your own. Nowhere does the Most High make this clause, if the body is not right, start another year. So the second part of this is the body not being right. When you do the word search, family, we have a couple words that refer to rightness. But the most common word, or the word that makes the most sense, is Strong's H4395, and it's malah. Malah fits best, and is never used concerning the new year. The word for rightness is malah. Malah means to be full, And abib does not mean to be full. When you check the word abib, it means greening or to be young. So nowhere did he says start your year when the barley is ripe. The word for ripeness is never used. The word for the new month is abib. Now, one of those elders says that the ancient word abib means barley. If you do the word search, that's not correct. It just became associated with, because we're looking for the barley to start shooting up, so you just associate barley with abib, but there's another word for barley, so that's not true. But the takeaway here, family, the word right never appears for abib. The Most High never told us to make sure the barley is right to start our year. He says, make sure, or when you see a barley greening. And then that's not the deciding factor, because you still got to make sure the moon. So if I know we got to the 28th or 29th of the 12th month, I start looking out for that new moon, and I'm checking the crops. But barley doesn't mean right. It means, abib does not mean right. It means greening. So again, they're doing man-made commandments in a nutshell. There's no way around it. It's a man-made commandment looking for the barley to be right. Nowhere does it say the barley has to be right for us to start our new year. So let's go over to Numbers chapter 9. Numbers 9, and we're going to read verses 1 through 5.
And also, it wasn't the barley supposed to just be a reference point? Weren't we supposed to always use the moon first?
Always. The moon is always the masterpiece. The moon is always the masterpiece. Great point. So we're going to read Numbers, in the Hebrew it's called Ba Madabar in the wilderness. Numbers 9, 1 through 5. Shema. Numbers 9, 1 through 5. Shema. Let me take this coat off. It's a little hot. So already we see this 13th month is on shaky ground based on the Most High's customs. Amen?
Amen.
So Numbers 9, it says, and the Most High spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai in the first month of the second year, after they were come out of the land of Egypt, saying. So it's Abib, right? And it's the second year. We've been in the wilderness for a year. We're going into our second year. We're in the wilderness at Sinai. Come? So Yah speaks to Moses, verse 2. Let the children of Israel also keep the Passover at his appointed season. In the 14th day of this month, at even, ye shall keep it in its appointed season, according to all the rites of it, and according to all the ceremonies thereof, ye shall keep it. So we're keeping Passover in the wilderness, and the celebration starts in the evening. Not the 14th doesn't start in the evening. The whole day is the 14th, but the celebration, our feast, is going to start at evening. Family, read that text again, highlight and underline, in the wilderness of Sinai. In the wilderness of Sinai. We're in the wilderness. There's no barley. There's no barley. So how are you using the barley as your determining factor when for 40 years we have proof that for 40 years, because of stiff-necked Israelites, the Most High kept us going into a circle. When you check that diagram, our elders, because of that stiff-necked generation, the Most High calls these people to go in a circle for 40 years. But this bears witness, even in the wilderness, we kept Passover and unleavened bread. But we're in the wilderness. There's no barley. So how are you saying the barley is determining when you start your year? You're out of line with the Most High. The barley is just a sign, a clue that the new year is near. It's not the determining factor. Because we had Passover without barley in the wilderness for 40 years. So that's something to lay on your heart. How do we have 40 years in the wilderness with no barley? Did you not start a year? He just said right here, it's the second year. So they're in the wilderness, there's no barley. So adding your 13th month because the barley's not right, it's not lining up with the text. Amen? Amen. So now that we got that out of the way, we're going to look historically to see if we can ever find Passover landing in the pagan month of April. We're going to, because that's what's going on. Those who had a Passover in April, that's why they're in the 9th month now. And that's why they're behind us. So we're going to see historically if we could ever find Passover landing in the month of April. And for the first reference, we're going to go to Josephus. We're going to go to Josephus. And let me get it on the screen here. And I'm going to put this on the screen so y'all can see it. Is it over there?
Yeah, but it's
All right. Vic, can you come? Get this way. Okay. Elder, can you see Josephus on the screen? You can close, click off that. You can close that arrow with this pane here. Hit that arrow. Okay. So, scroll up for me. Scroll back down, I'm sorry. Where is it at? All right, boom, right here, scroll down. So this is complete work of Josephus. Josephus is indeed a Levite, even though they whitewashed him. And this is coming from, this is the history, the antiquity of the Jews, book number 3, chapter 10, section 5. And Josephus says, in the month of Xanthicus, which is called by us, which is by us called Nisan, it is the beginning of our year on the 14th day of the lunar month, when the sun is in Aries. For in this month it was that we were delivered from bondage under the Egyptians. So Josephus says we came out of bondage. The heathens or the Greek month is Xanthicus, but we call it Nisan. And because he's in Rome now, and Rome's are sun worshipers, he says the sun is in Aries. The sun is in Aries. I needed that 1 second. We're about to take a look at when the sun is in Aries. We're going to take a look at when the sun is in Aries. Done with that. We're trying to see if we can find Passover ever landed in April.